Hey, welcome to the Black Knight Nation podcast. I'm your host, Sal Interdonato. The Black Knight Nation podcast is brought to you by Higher Echelon. Higher Echelon is the company run by Joe Ross. Joe Ross, former Army fullback, former Army assistant coach, former Army officer, a guest on the Black Knight Nation podcast. We'll get to the our YouTube channel in a second, but first, guys, check out BlackKnightNation.com. We have a lot of coverage of preseason camp right now. Wrote a story on Brady Small, Army first team center yesterday. Our guests will know a little bit about playing center for Army. We have a story on Brady. We also I did a scrimmage recap. There's a photo gallery by Lynn Fern, a lot of stuff. If you go onto our YouTube channel, man, there's so many interviews now that I've loaded up. I did 6 interviews yesterday after practice. Crazy stuff. Good stuff with Aaron Smith, Brady Small, Jordan Owens, Max DiDomenico, Hayden Reed, and then Coach Munkin. So check all those out on our YouTube channel. Give us a subscribe. And if you're watching this today, give us a thumbs up and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And now all the plugs are out. Now we get to the big guest tonight, Zach Peterson. Zach, we wanted to do this for a long time. You solo on this podcast. We really appreciate you joining us tonight.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here. It's really cool to come back and interact and be a part of Black Knight Nation. And I still remember when we were doing media engagements back when I played in 2009, 2010. So it's exciting to be on the show, and I'm pumped you got me on tonight.
Yeah, I did a Google search. So I'm like, let me just do a Google search, type in your name, my name, and it came up with a story where I was writing about how Coach Ellerson was doing practicing, only using 16 to 17 hours a week to practice during his time, which was less. I think 20 was the limit, or maybe even more at the time. And I quoted you in the story. You always had the energy at practice. You were always bringing it. And we'll talk about how you got your nickname down the road too. And just played center. Let's really get the accolades done here. Starting center on the 2010 Armed Forces Bowl Championship team. 2-year starter, right?
Yes, sir. 2 years. Yep.
2-year starter, and now you're back at back with the team as the admissions support officer, right, for the team.
That's right. That is the duty title that I hold. I do a number of other things, around the program, but admissions support officer is that's my primary function and my day job, so to speak.
Gotcha. We usually start with how you got to West Point, how your journey began, and we usually ask your recruiting story and how did it all work out for you that you ended up at West Point.
Yeah, for me, I grew up in Georgia. It's Sharpsburg, Georgia is the name of the place. So it's a location about 45 minutes or so southwest of Atlanta. And that's where I grew up, and I played my high school football in that area. It's an extremely talented area when it comes to football and the level of competition and what that's like down there in Sharpsburg and Noonan. And right in that area, you've got extremely good high school football. And so that's kind of what I got into as I came up as a younger child into being a high schooler. And so that really became my focus and my passion in high school was playing football. And I was playing it in a really good area in terms of, just Noonan and Sharpsburg and the competition that was out there, and that level of high school football was very competitive. And so I really got into that, and that was my focus. And what I was about was playing football, and I wanted to play at the collegiate level and at the Division I level. And so that's what I was about as I came up. And, the background and all that is, I was a child of 2 parents that were military. My mom and dad both were served in the Army. And there were generations of Army officers that were on my dad's side of the family that dated back to World War I. So I had a lot of lineage in terms of the military, just from a family aspect. So I was exposed to that early in my life and mentored and guided and just aware of it as I came up. And then the two kind of meshed in terms of football and the military, in terms of what I was into and what I wanted to pursue. And that's really how I ended up at Army and coming to West Point to play football. We're really those two dynamics.
Did any of the other service academies recruit you?
No, and I actually took offense to that. Navy and Air Force really they did not recruit me heavily. Army did, and I had some FCS schools, Morehead State and Charleston Southern, that were recruiting me pretty good. But I really wasn't interested in the other two service academies. Like I said, Army was kind of what I was into just from the family side of things.
When you're growing up and you're starting to play football, are you, and then Army is coming into the picture with your family's background stuff. Are you watching Army football games? Are you an Army fan at that point or not yet?
At that point, like I started to notice it. I think when I was a sophomore, junior in high school is when I really started to kind of figure out what West Point was and what, going to the United States Military Academy was all about. And so it was in the middle of high school that I really kind of became aware of it. And I was, I thought it was awesome. And I thought like the role that the Academy plays for our country was just something that was incredible.
Yeah. And so you get up to West Point. We always try to talk about that freshman year. I think maybe military in your family, were you kind of a little bit more prepared than some others for the whole beast and for the whole military, the freshman year there at West Point, or no?
Well, for me, like I went to the preparatory school, USMAPS, and at that time it was located in Fort Monmouth, New Jersey, which is now co-located at West Point. The prep school is right there, near the main school. So I initially went there, and that was a great way of kind of putting your toe in the water and getting exposed to what was going to happen when you got to the main school. And so that really helped me kind of understand what I was getting into and get that little bit of taste of it. And also have another year to just develop and physically mature so that I could just come in that much more prepared the following season.
Gotcha. What was your freshman year like at Army? I'm trying to go back. That's not Brock's first year, is it?
It actually is. So I was recruited by Kevin Ross, who was the son of Bobby Ross, under that coaching staff. That's who recruited me and offered me to come to Army. And so I went and I was all about it. I was at the prep school, and at that time during that year in 2006 to 2007, Coach Ross stepped down and Coach Brock took over for those first really. So he took over while I was at the prep school, and then my freshman year was his first year as the head coach. And so I had him my freshman and sophomore seasons at the academy.
I'm trying to think. He was running a pro style your freshman year. Then he tried a little bit of triple your sophomore year. Those are my first 2 years on the beat. And then Ellerson comes in your junior year, and he prefers lighter offensive linemen. So I don't know how that was for you, because I don't know if your freshman and sophomore year you're trying to maybe gain some weight or be at a certain weight, and then it all changes your junior year. I don't know what that was. I always like to hear offensive lineman stories, Zach.
Right. Well, like you said, like I was running a pro style offense at the prep school and my first year at the academy. And then under Coach Brock, it changed to a triple option. And we did that for a year. And then Coach Ellerson came in and we continued to do the option, with differences, obviously. But as far as like weight, in terms of being a center at the academy, it was never really a concern for me. Like I was always on what they called at the time the ASAP program, which is the special athlete program, basically. And they have a new name for it now called the MAP athlete program, monitored athlete program. In terms of like you can be at the size that you need to be at. You can, if your position in your sport requires you to be a certain weight, like that's fine. Go do it. Go be it. And then when you get done with your playing career, we will enforce something to get you down to an appropriate size to commission as an officer in the Army. And so like it was never for me like a huge thing or issue. Like I played around 270. And that in the system we ran was about the right weight and about where I needed to be at in terms of needing to do the different techniques and responsibilities I had as a center. So I never had any issues with weight. And I can specifically remember after we won the Armed Forces Bowl in 2010 in like, December of 2010, we won that bowl game. We took a week or two of, leave or break after the game. And then we came back in January, and this was my senior year. And it was the commandant at the time. He brought us into a room and he was like, all right, hey, thanks for what you guys did for your sports team. Appreciate your service to the academy. But like now you have 4 months to, get to the appropriate size, lose all the weight, and get ready, pass the APFD at the time, pass the IOCT, meet height weight standards, and get ready to commission and go, serve in the Army. And it was like, okay, great, game on, let's go do it. That was what happened with that.
Yeah, did he mention that you guys brought winning football back to West Point for the first time since 1996? Did he mention that at all, or
no? The academy leadership was very appreciative of that season and the efforts we had made on the football field. And like you just mentioned, we hadn't been to a bowl game since 1996, and we hadn't won a bowl game since 1984, I believe. And so bowl games at the academy in that era were not common. And so we went to one and we won one. And that was a great, just a great event, a great look for the academy. And everybody was very excited about that. Yeah.
No doubt. Guys, if you're watching right now and you have any questions for Zach or I, please feel free to send them in and we'll post them up. Zach, let's just get to your junior year. Ellerson comes in, and how does that work out? I mean, your sophomore year, I'm trying to remember, are you traveling with the team? Are you on the depth chart your sophomore year? And how does the transition go?
I mean, when I was a freshman, definitely I was running scout team and doing stuff that most freshmen are generally doing, especially linemen as they're coming into the program. I did travel for the Navy game as a freshman, scout team player of the week. So that was a highlight and a big deal for me at the time. And as a sophomore, I had elevated a little bit in terms of the depth chart. And I was dressing at home games and traveling a little bit. And I was on the cusp of really getting into, that 2 deep and playing. And then as a junior, I became the starter and, started really my last 2 years and we had a good run there.
I'm trying to remember, for the most part, like you said, started your last 2 years. I don't remember you. I mean, you play. I mean, and as an offensive lineman, and you're playing in that style of offense. It wasn't the Monken style of offense to a point, but I mean, you guys were running the football a lot. I mean, just to stay. I mean, I'm sure you get banged up, but talk about the toughness that was needed to play through some of that, because I don't remember you taking any games off, not starting any games. So
yeah, we had. I really think. And I know Steve Anderson comes on the podcast and other people from my era. We had a bunch of, in my opinion, talented football players and guys who really were committed to the Army Football Brotherhood and trying to bring a winning culture to the program. And I think we started to do that, and we moved the needle in the right direction. And it's a credit to people, like Steve, Josh McNary, Ollie Villanueva, and guys in that year group that were recruited by Bobby Ross and that staff, and had been through a lot, in terms of you come in under a certain scheme and a certain coaching staff, and then it changes once you go from the prep school to the main school with a different coach and a different staff under him. And then a year later, we're going to run a triple option, which was different than what we were doing our prep and freshman years. And then we're now going to put in a whole new coaching staff with the way that they do it. So we had been through a lot, and I think there's a core group of people in that era that were committed to our program and committed to the brotherhood, that did the best they could with the circumstances that we had. And we had a highlight as we went out my senior season in 2010 with that bowl win, in the Armed Forces Bowl, going 7-6, winning that bowl game and having a winning record, which had not been done in a long amount of time, like we just talked about.
Yeah, and we had, if you guys are watching now, if you go on our YouTube channel, we did a 2010 Armed Forces Bowl reunion show. So Zach, this is your second appearance on the Black Knight Nation podcast.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, and we had guys like we had Steve Anderson, of course, was on, Donnie Dixon was on, Richard King was on. I'm trying to think, Josh Jackson was on. I don't know.
Donovan Travis was on there,
Yeah.
Marcus Hilton,
Yeah,
and a few others. Like there's a good, talented group of people from my class that were great football players and did a lot for the Army football program.
Yeah, and some of those guys, like you and Steve, you probably met at prep, right? You and Steve are now.
That's right. That 2007 prep season. All of us had graduated high school in 2006, and then we went to the prep school. And Steve and all those guys you just mentioned were in that core group of guys that ended up being on that 2010 team. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's just like that group and just man. And now you got to help me out here, Zach. It's been a while. 2010's a while back, but I'm trying to remember like the line for you guys. I know you played center. Seth Reed was on that line, right?
He was, and we had Anise Mersey played offensive tackle, Joe Bailey and Jason Johnson, and that was the main group that was on that offensive line during that time.
Yeah, and I mean, so your junior year, we reminisce with Steve all the time about his career and his times, but let's talk about that junior year and how you guys did you see something that junior year that said, hey, we're on? I know you guys had a couple close calls and stuff, and did you see something that junior year that you kind of figured that 2010 season was going to be something different?
We did. So, if we go back into that space and time, we went 3-9 my freshman year, 3-9 my sophomore year, and then the junior year that you're talking about right now, we went 5-7. Yeah. And so we started to close the gap and improve in a lot of areas. I can specifically remember that year when we beat Vanderbilt at home in Michie Stadium.
Yeah. And
that was a huge win for us over a Power 5 football team, an SEC football team, where the Corps Cadets stormed the field. And it was, that was an overtime game, and it was a great win for that team and our program. And so that was year one under Rich Ellerson. And so we started to kind of turn the tide in terms of those losing seasons. 5-7 is still not what you want, and it's not where the standard is with the current state of the program. But it was a step in the right direction, and it was a step before we went to that 7-6 season in 2010, my senior year. So we were moving in the right direction that season that you're talking about, that junior season, year one under Rich Ellerson.
No doubt.
Again, like that was great, and people were very excited about that. But I can't not mention the current state of the program and the improvement in terms of the standard that we have now and the expectation that we have now with Army football and what we've done. And that's a credit to Jeff Monken and the current staff that we have.
No doubt. We have a comment here that I want to post, a question for you, Zach. It's from Kieran Kane from the 101st Screaming Eagles. How did your football experience at Army help translate to military service?
Yeah, that's a great question from Kieran. And I think the biggest thing I would say in terms of that question is when you play football at West Point and at Army, you're in a position where there is a lot of stress and a lot of pressure and pressure situations, whether that is a summer camp practice, a winter workout, or playing in the Army Navy game in front of 60, 70,000 people. You deal with that and you have to learn how to operate at a successful level in those environments through the Army football experience. And that stuff shows up in service once you get out into the Army. And I can specifically remember being on certain deployments and being in pressure situations where the stakes were a lot higher than they were playing football. But that experience in terms of managing stress and pressure as a football player showed up as an Army officer in different capacities in different situations. And I would say that's how it really prepared me and allowed me to be a successful officer based on being a football player at the academy.
No doubt. And Kieran says, looking good, brother. And then we have Kyle Highland checking in saying, just coach with an exclamation point, Zach.
Yeah, no, both of those guys are great friends of mine. And Kyle, he just recently came onto the staff and has done a great job working for Aiden, for our director of football operations. He's that assistant in the department, and he's been a fresh breath of air and some great energy coming into the program. And Kieran, I've known through military service, and he's an exceptional officer in his own right. As I've seen him out in the Army and what he's doing down at Fort Campbell, Kentucky.
Amazing. The senior year of the 2010 season, right? Man, I'm refreshing my memory, and maybe that year. I mean, I remember thinking that you guys could do something that season, right? And I remember that I'm trying to get to games. I'm looking at your schedule: Eastern Michigan, Duke, Tulane. You played games at Tulane. I'm like, I got to get on the road and see this team, right? At some point, and I did convince them to send me to Kent State when you guys clinched the bowl berth there. But
Yeah.
talk about a little bit about the early season for you guys, because looking at it, you guys got off to a pretty good start, 3-1, and the Hawaii game was really close. I remember that game. That was a little bit of a crazy game where you could have won that game too. So you guys got off to a pretty strong start that year.
We really did get off to a great start. Again, it's a credit to the class and the players that were on that team and how we started. And we opened up against Hawaii. I remember that, and I remember it coming down to the wire. And it's amazing to think we could have easily won that game and could have been sitting there with 8 wins. But we were very competitive in every game. And I remember you referenced the Duke game. That was a Power 5 victory over an ACC opponent, which is a big deal. You talk about it's hard enough to win on the road. Yeah, that's a great point. It's hard enough to win a Division I football game at that level, and the effort and time and talent that is involved in winning a Division I football game is a task in itself. And then you talk about doing it at the Power 5 level on the road against an ACC opponent. That was a great win, going down to Duke and beating them that season. And there's other games. You mentioned the Hawaii game, but the game of that season that jumps out to me was when we went to the Meadowlands and played Rutgers and went to double overtime and let that game slip away at the very end. But, that's another very respected opponent that we were right there in.
Yeah.
And, we didn't quite get that one done, but that, there was that was an indication of the type of team we had and, the level of commitment and focus we had in terms of how we were doing things that year. So yeah, it was a good season.
Yeah, I don't want to remind three of your losses were by a touchdown or less. So I mean, you guys were kind of right there to maybe even, who knows if those things work correctly. But you know what Steve always talks about, you guys being strong road team, right? You went Eastern Michigan opener, you won. You talked about the Duke game, you won. At Tulane, you guys won. Then at Kent State, when you guys had a clinch, I mean, you kind of blew them out in that game. And Tulane team's always going to have some pretty good athletes that are playing on Sundays, no doubt. And you guys won that, like, I think at 41-22 or something like
Yeah, we played that year. We played Tulane in the Superdome, where the New Orleans Saints play, and it was awesome experience to go. Again, it was a road game that we went down there and handled and took care of business. And Tulane's a great program. I mean, look at what Tulane did last season,
Yeah.
in their bowl game. I mean, the Tulane is a great opponent, and yeah, we had a great season, and it's a credit again to the seniors that were on the team that year and what they had been through leading up to that point.
Yeah, you know what I thought was interesting about that season, Zach? You have a lot of senior leadership, right? But your quarterback, Trent Steelman, is a younger player. He's a sophomore. So, and Trent, is the quarterback of the Army football team is always going to get, when he does well, he's going to get the praise. When he doesn't do so well, who knows? But I mean, Trent was pretty thick-skinned playing quarterback, man. And he was one of the toughest players I can remember as far as on a skilled level, right? A skill position player that I can remember. What are your memories of Trent?
Yeah, I have very, very positive memories of him. I mean, like you mentioned, he's extremely tough guy, a 4-year starter at West Point, starting as a freshman, is definitely not the norm and something that's very uncommon. And he was a guy who had a lot of confidence and obviously a lot of ability to be able to come in as a freshman and become a 4-year starter and do what he did at that position, at that school, is a credit to his ability and his mind state and just his approach to the game. So I remember him being a very confident, great athlete and a guy who was wanting to win football games like the rest of us. And he was just able to do it at a level and a clip that was not normal because he did it and was able to contribute so early in his career.
Yeah, I think with the recent success that Army's had, right? We talk about the quarterbacks that have played, from last year, Tyler, Jamel Jones, Cade Ballard. We can go through the list. Christian Anderson, Kelvin Hopkins, Ahmad Bradshaw. I think sometimes Trent doesn't get talked about a lot, but then that 2010 season when you guys bring winning back, he's the starting quarterback, and like you said, in 2009, that Vanderbilt game, he's right in the mix in that game too. So I mean, right down to the wire, it was great watching. And you guys guys in the backfield like Malcolm Brown, right? Brian Cobbs, you're blocking for. Who am I missing?
Uh,
Hassan on that team. Hassan on the team. Yeah.
Hasn't been there. Yeah, Raymond Maples.
Oh boy. If Ray
Patrick
sees me, he's
Ewing.
gonna. Yeah.
Yeah, there were some talented running backs, and Trent being in the middle of all that is a credit to him. And what's tough is he may not get the level of notoriety that some of those other names that you mentioned have gotten, and that's that I think that comes with the service academy games and how we did in some of those. And
Yeah.
Trent was a great player in his own right, and the other players you mentioned are also great quarterbacks. And I think they all deserve to be mentioned and appreciated equally in terms of what they've done for Army football.
Yeah, Pat Mealy, can't forget Pat Mealy, right? I mean, Pat was another tough runner
Sure.
from Maryland. I remember covering his recruiting. Who was Maples?
Brandon Maples, yeah.
Man, that guy was
He's a
special.
great player.
I mean,
And he is another one who contributed early on in his career and was able to come into the program and immediately be a person that we relied on and contributed and produced very well statistically.
yeah, Ray was different because Ray was a physical guy for he playing the slot. Ray was put together, and he was laying out punishment when he was running. I mean, he had a lot of speed. Wow, him. You know who the most athletic running back I think I covered in my time at Army, and this is just my opinion. He's up there, but Larry Dixon's also up there too.
Yes, absolutely. I'm glad you mentioned him because as you were mentioning all those names, I was thinking about Larry and the career he had at Army and all the great things that he did, and that definitely was an impressive career that he put together.
real quick, I'm totally off the senior season. We'll get back to it real quick in the bowl game and stuff. Were you a part of the morning practices at West Point, or were you not?
I was not. That
Okay.
happened after my time, but I have heard about them and the shift that happened after I had finished playing.
Yeah, because I was going to talk to you. My lasting memory of Larry Dixon, I think it was his freshman year. I gotta believe it was a morning practice. I could be wrong. He's running a drill where it's 1-on-1, and Josh Jackson and him are going at it, and he literally is running at Josh Jackson, and he hurdled Josh Jackson. I'm not talking like mid level body. I'm talking over Josh Jackson's helmet. He hurdled him. I'm like, this is somebody just that with a ridiculous athleticism and talent. And I think that Larry's another guy that is another person that the winning didn't happen as much during their time, but he's another talented player that sometimes people might not give the certain praise and kudos. But he was fun to watch, no doubt. So
Yeah, that's an interesting story because if he did that over Josh Jackson, I mean, he deserves a lot of credit because Josh in himself he's a great player and a great athlete, and he did a lot for us during that era that we talked about, playing corner and being on the edge and defending some really talented receivers. So I mean, they're both exceptional players.
yeah. So real quick, we'll get to the senior season and the bowl game. How you guys finished on a winning note? You get that we talked about earlier, 7-6 bowl champions, first winning season since '96. Man, that game I talk about a lot. That SMU team had a lot of talent on it. It was a 16-14 game, but you had like 6 or 7 players on that SMU team that went to play in the NFL. Cole Beasley was one of them. I think Eldrick Robinson was another. I mean, they were a pretty talented team. The defense, got the start with the fumble and the scoop and score by Josh. But I mean, what do you remember the most about that game on the offensive side and what you guys were able to do to win that game?
Yeah, I mean, you kind of said the thing that I was thinking about in terms of Josh McNary and that scoop and score touchdown that he had. And I remember that moment and that play that he made on defense and the energy that it created in that game and how we really turned the momentum based on his play and his ability to get that thing into the house, because it was pretty tough sledding for both teams offensively. I don't, it was a low scoring game and there was not a lot of points that were being put up by either offense. But Josh McNary on that touchdown, getting us going and getting us some energy and some momentum by his play and that specific one, gave us a lot of confidence to at least take control of the game from a mentality standpoint. And we put together some drives later on to ultimately win the game. So Josh was an exceptional player, and we all know what he did in terms of sacks and the impact that he had from that position, and then his NFL career that followed for after Army. So I mean, credit in that bowl game, a lot of it should go to Josh McNary and his ability to just change the entire dynamic and momentum and energy against SMU on that day.
Yeah, you're playing at SMU Stadium too. They didn't talk about that at
Right.
that point.
Which why we were playing there was they were renovated. The game should have been played at TCU Stadium, but it was being renovated, the Armed Forces Bowl. And so SMU, not far away from TCU, ended up hosting it. So it really turned into like a home game for SMU. Yeah. And, we still were able to go in there and get it done despite us playing like an away game against them. And, credit to SMU though, because they showed up, and that was it. What felt like a sold out crowd in a sold out stadium. And
yeah,
there was a lot of energy in that game just based on the attendance and both teams being, into the game.
Yeah, I was in attendance for that game. That was, what I realized that when I was there at that game, I realized, man, Army football fans travel well, because it almost felt like at times Zach, it almost felt like it was a home game for you guys when things were going right for you. I mean, the crowd was into it. There were a lot of I think Bell Helicopter was the whatever it was like, so there were a lot of military in attendance. I remember being on the sideline for the final plays, final moments of the game, and Ronnie Makeda is on the sidelines, not too far away from me, former Army quarterback, who I guess is from the Dallas area. And man, just seeing that Trent Steelman complete that pass to David Brooks to seal the game for you guys. I mean, that must have been to be. I'm on the sidelines, like just thinking, wow, that's pretty incredible. You're on the field when that happens. Do you remember what was going through your mind when that happened?
Yeah, I was extremely proud of our team and our program. And like you said, our Black Knight Nation and our Army football fans, they traveled very well for that game. And, Texas is a great state when it comes to military service. And there are some great Americans that are from there. And Fort Cavazos, formerly known as Fort Hood, was not far down the road. And there's a lot of academy connections, and the Army football enterprise showed up to support that. And some of that was, we hadn't been on a stage like that in a bowl game since, like we talked about, 1996. Yeah. So going to one was a huge deal for our program, and our fan base showed up. And, when we sealed the game on the catch that you talked about, I just remember feeling like an immense sense of pride and accomplishment, and just being very happy for my teammates and everybody associated with Army football.
Yeah, I remember. So on the roster, you guys have got you have Mike Gann and Jason Johnson, who were already commissioned officers playing in a bowl game, right? And they go off to their final game is a bowl game win, but then it's like then they're off to their service afterwards. They're not going back to West Point for long, right after that. So I mean, that was pretty cool to see them go out also winners. And
yes, and both of those guys on that football team were not only great football players, from Mike Gann as a defensive tackle and Jason Johnson as an offensive tackle, but they were great leaders. And they were older guys, like you just said. They had already commissioned and graduated, and they were playing in that bowl game, and they were key leaders for us during that season and in that bowl game. And we looked to them a lot of times. I know on the offensive line, Jason was a guy that showed up every day with, just an intensity that was infectious across the offensive line.
Yeah, I meant to ask you what it was like going up against Mike Gann in practice. That must have not been, that must have got you a little bit better, right?
Oh yeah, no, Mike was extremely talented, and he's a Georgia boy like myself. So we came from the same area, and I remember we were both seniors in high school, and we went to the ESPN zone in Atlanta on signing day, and we signed with Army. And I was going to the prep school, and he came in direct. But then it ended up being that we both were seniors in that bowl game. And so I had known Mike for a long time, and had obviously seen him a lot in practice. And he was a really good player, and he helped make me a better center going against him in practice, and competing against him across the line of scrimmage all the time. Yeah, we definitely, I think, helped each other.
No doubt. So you get the 7-6 year. You go back to West Point, like you say. The commandant wants you to drop some weight so you can graduate, from West Point. What's life like after West Point for you?
Yeah. As soon as I finished, I had been offered to be an athletic intern, and that was an exceptional opportunity. And I was blessed to be offered, a position as an athletic intern at our prep school. And so I coached the offensive line for a season, following my playing career. And then I went into the Army, and just did a lot of different things and deployed a lot. I hit a stretch where I deployed 5 times in a 7-year period, with 4 of those being to Afghanistan.
Wow.
And also deploying to Kuwait that last time, in the Middle East and some other countries over there. as a company commander. So I really just jumped in and tried to apply the same level of commitment and passion that I had for the football program into the military. And it was a lot of fun, and I got to do a lot of um, exciting and great things. And now I'm where I'm at now, still on active duty, and very excited about being back into the program.
No doubt. Some Army grads have football grads have talked to us about when you're overseas and you're a tour in Afghanistan or stuff. Sometimes, like you said, some of those things that you learned at West Point and then with the Army football program really really help you out. And I don't know if were you kind of in some pretty in the thickest things, so to speak, out there where you kind of needed that stuff to like get you through, so to speak, or now?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And the probably the most intense deployment that I had was my first deployment in 2013. Like I said, I had just been an athletic intern, and I had moved. Um, Really, you go to field artillery. I was a field artillery officer, so I went to that basic officer leader course, and then I showed up to my first unit, and we deployed to a very kinetic and contested environment. Um, and I was right there in the mix. And really, the precursor to that was one of my teammates who was a year older than me, Chase Prasnicki, was killed in action, and is an American hero, and for all the things that he did in the area of operations that I went into the same position as a company fire support officer in Wardak, Afghanistan. And
Wow.
So I went into that environment very quickly after being an athletic intern. And, that was a tough deployment. Our company lost some soldiers, and, but I go back to what I talked about earlier in the podcast in terms of handling pressure and stress and being able to operate effectively in that type of environment is a credit to Army football and the training and the process of going through all that, allowed me to go into that job and do what I needed to do to be successful. And then as I came back from that deployment, a former teammate of mine who deserves a lot of credit for what he did, a guy by the name of Mike Vitti, walked across the United States of America in 2014. He walked 7,100 kilometers, a kilometer for every service member killed in action. And he is my hero. And I have told him that for what he did to memorialize those fallen soldiers and bring, light and attention and awareness to their sacrifice. He's an exceptional human being. He's an exceptional coach. And he's someone I really look up to. He was a team captain for me when I played at Army as a freshman. Mike was a team captain his senior year. And he did that. And looking up to him as an Army football former player and him being one, and that act of selflessness is a testament to his character, his leadership, his ability to inspire people around him. And it was just an awesome thing. I can remember as he, had started in the state of Washington and walked south, all the way down to Arizona, and then walked all the way across the country to Fort Stewart, Georgia, where I had been stationed. And I just came back from that deployment that I just mentioned. And I walked a day with him of his hike, and just talking to him and seeing it up close and personal was very inspirational for me. And I can't appreciate Mike Vitti enough for, just what he's done as an Army football alumni and what he still is doing as a coach on our staff. So a lot of credit goes to him and just his commitment to not only the military, but the program.
Yeah, it's really great to have it must be great for the players, right? That the current players to be coached by a guy like Mike Vitti, who's been through it, right? I mean, he's been through it at the academy, he's been through it in the service, he's been through it outside of the service, and then comes to be a coach at West Point. And everything you said right there, Zach, really touches me, because I wrote about that stuff. when Chase passed, I wrote about that, and that was one of the toughest stories I had to write in my journalism career. Also when Mike was going across country, I wrote that story and followed that story, and then I think he finished up in Baltimore, if I'm correct.
He did. He finished at the Army Navy game.
Yeah.
In Baltimore, at the end of that hike that he had been doing. Yeah.
Like you said, I guess really what sums it up, and you're part of this too. Just it's to put into words just the not just the Army Brotherhood, but the type of people you have at West Point, the type of people you have as football brothers, right? And then what they do afterwards, and they just do incredible things. We know the people who are like the guys who own the Vegas Knights and the Florida Panthers and those guys. We know those stories, right? But the people that served and the people that did selflessly, right? And that's sometimes I think that I need to highlight that more, to be honest with you. So I really appreciate you bringing that up. And I did not know that story with you and Chase. And I mean, there must have been just an incredible. I know Chase was covering Chase. He was always a guy who would do anything for his team. He moved from quarterback to safety. He always he loved the game. He loved life. He always had a smile on his face when he was out there. And, just for you to follow in that position, I bet there was a lot of pride there, right? And taking over that spot. And it had to be a little bit emotional for you. So I really appreciate you sharing that. So.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. There's not enough good words you can say about Chase, and like you mentioned, not only his role as a player on the team, but then what he later went on to do for his country and his service to we have an award in our program named after him because he's just a special guy, and his legacy still lives on to this day. So. Coming in behind him in itself is something that you really can't put into words because he's that special of an individual.
Yeah, it's great. That's a great point that his memories kept alive by that award. And there's really been some really, amazing players that have won that award, and that's something I always look forward to hearing about during the team banquet of who wins the Chase Presnicki Award. Now that you're back, right? And you've been back last season. You were back last season, correct?
That's right. I'm starting my second year back in the program.
Yeah, just give us a little bit of your day-to-day, what it's like to be a part of the Army football team again.
Well, it's obviously an honor to be able to work for Coach Monken and the staff and to be back a part of Army football and to, have a job and have an ability to support the team is in itself an honor and a privilege. And I'm so blessed to be able to be in the position that I am. And I do admissions as, like we talked about, my primary function. And so I take that very serious, and my, ability to handle seniors in high school and mentor them and help them get into the academy is my piece. In terms of helping the program and allowing them, showing them how to get in and helping prep them for what they're about to do is where I focus my efforts on. And that's, just in terms of admissions requirements, answering questions about what to expect and getting them ready to go so that when they get here and they start playing, they can focus on football and being an Army football player. So that's my position on the staff, is the admissions officer. And then I also do like the advanced stuff in season for away games in terms of setting conditions before the team shows up at those different locations that we play at.
So you've been to Death Valley yet or no?
I haven't, but our chief of staff and our director of football operations went out there and did a site survey on it in the off season. And I'll go out there a couple of days this year before the team shows up and make sure we're ready to go. Yeah.
That's going to be incredible, man. That's going to be incredible to see Army play down there, and how Army plays against those top ranked teams. How they just it's a fist fight to the end, right? So hoping for a lot. I mean, the schedule, Zach. I mean, it's a lot, man. To be honest with you, it's very. This is probably the toughest schedule I've seen Army have since I started covering the team in 2007. Um, just the three Power Fives, right, and just the other teams on the schedule like UTSA, Coastal, and Troy. They're really good. Those are really good programs on the rise. So
Yeah, we have some exceptional opponents and some really good competition this season, and we're just gonna have to take it one game at a time. And I know that if we do what we do, we're gonna be okay. And it's a credit to our athletic administration in terms of building the schedule that we have, and it's honestly a credit to where the program's at to be able to go out and play a schedule like this, and compete with some of these teams. So, yeah, we're really looking forward to it and very excited about the challenge and the opportunity of those games.
yeah, I mean, it's going to be fun. People ask me, well, what kind of season you think Army's going to have, right? They ask me, Zach, hey, it's preseason now. Those questions are valid now, and I'm thinking, that this new offense, we'll see. You have to see how the first couple games go and see how the offense looks. I think the defense has enough back, and they've been doing a lot of. Nate Woody's been in the program for a while. We know what Nate Woody does. They play pretty good defense, and we'll see how. I think this offense could be pretty. It's going to be interesting because I don't know. It's going to be hard to game plan against. I'll tell you that much. It's going to be hard to. You're going to have a lot of different, A, B, C's, and D's on your defensive plan when you're going against this offense because you just don't know, and a lot of weapons too. I don't know what you've seen so far, in camp and stuff like that. Not to give any secrets away, but I think it'd be interesting to see how the offense goes and how the defenses try to scheme against the offense.
Right. Well, I know that we've got exceptional coaches and guys who are really good at what they do in terms of Nate Woody, Drew Thatcher, Matt Drinkle, and the coordinators that we have. And the program has full confidence and trust that those guys are going to put us in the best position to be successful in that really hard schedule that we have coming up. So I think we're going to be in a great position with the leadership that we have on the offensive and defensive side of the ball.
No doubt, no doubt. Hey, last question. You jumping into any drills? You getting a whistle or anything on the offensive line or anything? Or
no. I'm in my support staff role. I am not allowed to do that with NCAA compliance, and I again, and my job and where I can help the program is in admissions, and so that's where I focus on, and I put my efforts and time into getting people into school and trying to set them up for success once they get here so we can keep them for as long as possible. So that's my job in terms of Army football, and that's what I'm focused on and trying to do that to my best of my ability.
Nice. Hey, really appreciate you having you on tonight, Zach. Thanks for all the time. Your stories as a player, your stories serving in the military, and now what you're doing with the team, helping out the team. And I tell you, the Army's recruiting classes are pretty on the big side, Zach. So you're pretty busy. With the admissions side, no doubt. And
we have some really talented football players that have committed to come play at West Point, and we're really excited to get them here and have them help contribute to our program and help us win football games. And again, that's a credit to our coaching staff going out and recruiting these players and them making the decision to come to Army and ultimately bettering our program. And so we've got some great players that just came in and another group getting ready to come in, and Army football is going to be in great hands. And, we're going to have players that can help us win Division I football games.
Yeah, across the nation. I mean, like 30, over 30 states are usually represented on the roster. Some recruiting classes, You know, some states like are being represented now pretty well. Even recruits from Montana are getting looks and stuff. Jake Rendina, a freshman's from Montana. I'm like, I can't even recall anybody from the state of Montana playing at Army during my time. So I mean, great job by the recruiting, and you're a part of that in the admissions. Thanks so much tonight, and guys, thanks so much for joining us. Check out our YouTube channel, like I said, subscribe, give this a thumbs up. We got a bunch of preseason interviews. There's a playlist now where you can see all 19 of them, I think. Really appreciate you watching tonight. And Zach, thanks so much for joining us, and we'll be back next time.
Thanks, Sal. Appreciate you having me on. Beat Navy.